everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, in this video here, I'm going to be doing a little poetry reading, I've decided. I'm not a great fan of poetry, but there are a few poems that I hold very dear in my affection, mainly because they've been in my life ever since I was a very little child. Because my dad he's not anymore, but he was an English teacher, I was surrounded by quite a lot of poems and other sort of literary works from quite a young age. And so there are some poems that hold quite a kind of like nostalgic pull over me, I guess. Now, one of my favourite seasons, I would say my preferred season is actually autumn. I do like autumn. I think more so as I've grown older, I've begun to realise that this is my favourite season. I'm not sure if it's always been my favourite season, but I've grown to appreciate autumn. I think particularly because I'm not a fan of very hot weather. I don't like humidity, and and now, certainly as an adult, I would say that summer is my least favourite season. And so I think autumn's my favourite season, followed by spring, then winter, and then summer. So autumn. Now, before I so the poem I want to read to you today then is the Ode to Autumn. The Ode to Autumn by the poet John Keats. John Keats was an English poet of the 19th century, and he wrote the Ode to Autumn in 1820. And it's one of his most famous poems, and the most often cited. And as a little girl, I was already familiar with this poem because my dad used to put it to music. My dad often used to sing poems to me. He seemed to have quite a gift for putting poems to music. So even at the age of like 3-4 years old, I knew some of the words to Ode to Autumn, and I could just recall them and sing them. And I used to often sing this when I was at school. I remember in a reading corner when I was in reception, I used to sometimes just sing these songs randomly. So it used to go, season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch-eves run, to bend with apples the mossed cottage-trees. And so it went on. So I knew that first stanza. I could put that to music, and I still do. It's kind of stayed in my head. And I actually studied the Ode to Autumn when I was doing my A-levels, and I did English literature. One of the poems I studied was the Ode to Autumn, and I remember writing. I got quite a good grade for it when I did my English exam, and it definitely helped my dad, being an English teacher, because he helped me interpret. Because it doesn't come naturally to me interpreting poems and stuff, particularly because of all the metaphors and stuff. I've got better at as I've got older, so it definitely helped my dad being an English teacher because he could explain it all to me. But this is a poem, as I say, that I do hold dear in my. It is a poem that I do. It's been in my life a long, long time. So I want to read the poem out to you. So here goes. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch-eves run, to bend with apples the mossed cottage-trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd and plump the hazel shells with a sweet kernel, to set budding more and still more later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has o'erbrimmed their clamming cells. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy hook spares the next swathe, and all its trined flowers. And sometimes, like a gleaner, thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press with patient look, thou watchest the last oozings, hours by hours. Where are the songs of spring? Ay, where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too, while barred clouds bloom the soft dying day, and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue. Then in a wailful choir the small gnats mourn among the wither sallows, borne aloft, or sinking as the light wind lives or dies. And full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne, hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the redbreast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies. So that's The Ode to Autumn, one of my favourite poems that I used to know even as a little girl, although I didn't really know the meanings back then. And particularly now as autumn is my favourite season, I just like quoting that poem. Now I went and did a little bit of reading about this poem on trusted Spark Notes, and I made a few notes about it. So it's interesting that Keats he personifies the figure of autumn as a female goddess, and the speaker tells autumn not to wonder where the songs of spring have gone, but instead to listen to her own music. Because autumn has its own music, its own special song, worth listening to, worth attending to. Autumn, for Keats, is a deified season, as the narrator in the poem, is paying homage to a goddess. The poem is full of themes of mortality and change. I mean, this poem, it can sound quite sombre and quite melancholy. Particularly the image of gathering swallows that are about to migrate overseas for their winter migration. There's a kind of interesting contrast. I mean, it's both a time of plenty, but at the same time, winter is approaching. It's kind of like it's on a cusp. So particularly, as I said, as I've already mentioned, the swallows gathering for their winter migration, which signifies an inevitable loss. And it's interesting, on Spark Notes, it said that, this, in a sense, parallels the human condition as well. Things changing, things constantly moving on. There's also the connection of harvesting to the seasonal cycle, which softens the edge of a tragedy, because spring will come again. Abundance and loss, song and silence, all connected. So maybe one of the main kind of themes of the poem, or one of its main morals, is the importance of accepting the passage of time. Because autumn is a transitional season. Interestingly, the poem was inspired by a walk that Keats made in the water meadows behind his Winchester College near his home. And also, giving it an air of poignancy, he wrote it at the age of 24 that he already had tuberculosis, which would kill him several months later. So the poem is very melancholy with its themes of mortality. So autumn is a season both of approaching death, but also a season of beauty as well, which is an interesting, how beauty and death and mortality can all be one. We often think of them as very separate things, but actually death itself can be beautiful. Now, I've read the poem. Do let me know what you think about this poem. I also thought I'd just impart a few autumn facts. I do like facts. So, as you're probably aware already, obviously, autumn officially starts this year on the 23rd of September, 2018. But this does vary because sometimes autumn starts on the 22nd of September. Now, that's the astronomical start of autumn, or the astronomical date, which is defined by the Earth's axis and orbit around the Sun. The 23rd this year is the autumn equinox, when day and night are of equal length. And then the night will become increasingly longer until the winter solstice on the 21st of December. but obviously the meteorological start date is the 1st of September, so we have two separate start dates, and that's just, that's just so that we have some consistency really for comparing climate. As far as I'm concerned, autumn's already begun, really. Now, another interesting fact about autumn is that as the temperature progressively falls, and also there's less light for photosynthesis, there's a chemical change in the leaves, because obviously the chemical that makes them green, chlorophyll, breaks down as less light hits the leaves, while other chemicals, such as carotene, remain to give the leaves the yellow and red colours. So that's why the leaves look increasingly red, brown and red, is simply because with the decrease in chlorophyll, we can better see the other chemicals within the leaf that are no longer camouflaged by the chlorophyll. And some of these chemicals, such as carotene, are also found, of course, in carrots and other things that we eat. And now moving on to mythology. In Greek mythology, and I am very, my mum used to read Greek myths to my brother and I growing up, so I'm quite well versed in Greek mythology. Autumn began when Persephone was abducted by Hades, the king of the underworld, to be queen of the underworld. In distress, Persephone's mother, Demeter, who's goddess of the harvest, caused all the crops on earth to die until her daughter was allowed to return the next year in spring. So that's an interesting, just sort of like little mythological aside. If you're interested, do go and check that myth out. It's a very interesting myth. I often think of autumn actually as summer turned down a dial, because often the weather can still, certainly in early autumn, the weather can still be quite nice and warm and light, but the evenings are cooler, the mornings are cooler, and it's just a lot more bearable, I think. The other thing, we also of course have so many interesting foods that come out in autumn, such as blackberries. I'm not sure if in the past I actually really liked blackberries, but I've learned to like them now, and I actually really quite like them now. I've been having them quite a lot. Do you like blackberries? Let me know. I'm going to put a link at the bottom of this video to Eat the Seasons link, which has a little piece about blackberries, because they're now in season. As I said, I've been eating them quite a lot. An interesting fact about blackberries is that they are actually a relative of the rose family. I suppose it's not surprising considering they're brambles. They're also known as brambles. Think of bramble pie. We know them more as blackberries. And also, of course, blackberries actually contain a chemical. I can't actually remember it, so I'd have to go and double check it. It begins with S. Any of you might know what I'm talking about, but I can't quite remember it. It's actually one of the active compounds in aspirin. So blackberries actually have an analgesic effect, although I think you'd have to have them in quite vast quantities to really experience that effect. So as I say, I'm going to finish this video now. Let me know what you think about autumn, if anything about autumn that you particularly like or don't like. I hope you've enjoyed this video, so thank you for watching.